For doing faceplate turning on here, I want the faceplate permanently fixed to the shaft, which means I need another drive shaft. And I've made one here already, and this one is a bit bigger to give me more support for the faceplate, but that means I also need bigger bearing blocks, which I could swap these out by just taking out the wood screws here, but it's not ideal, so I've just made a whole another headstock to go on here. And on this headstock, instead of having wood screws here, I'm going to use some hanger bolts which screw into here, and they have a machine screw thread up here which doesn't wear out. Now if you don't have hanger bolts like this, you can just use pieces of threaded rod and just make sure it's a tight fit and screw that straight in there. Add a bit of wood glue and that gives you plenty of hold. I still need to keep the shaft from sliding side to side, so I've got a block that screws onto here. So with my new 16mm shaft and the pulleys turned, I'm getting to the point that I've been procrastinating about, and that is making a 4-jaw chuck, and here's the templates that I've printed out for that. Now I need to drill some holes in here for some threaded rod to go in like this, and to get the holes consistent and precise, I made this little guide to go in here. Now I don't normally like using spade bits because they're not that precise, but with this one I've ground the edges down just a little bit to give me just the right kind of fit on my shaft. Now I need to mount this on the end of a shaft, and I figure another piece of wood like this would be best to put that on with. And now if I just drive that in there, just see if I can get that nice and precise. Now to get some glue in there to help bond that together. I've been gluing this together on just a spare piece of shaft just to make sure the holes are lined up. But now I need to use a gear puller to actually get it off. I sized those holes a little bit too small. The fit is too tight. I'm going to try to sand that hole a little bit just to make that fit a little bit easier. So I had been thinking of using a keyway to lock it on there, but I think a pin is better, so here I'm drilling a hole through the shaft. I had to switch to an extra long drill bit to get that hole through to the other side. Now the hole I drilled is a little bit off center, so I widened the holes a bit. And usually what I do is I get the hole in here a little bit off center too, so I try to put them on there so they match. But this one seems to be unusually centered. Now to make sure I can line these holes up, I'm just going to draw a line that lines up with the hole here. And it looks like I sanded it enough because I can just force this on there with my hand now. We put the pin through here. So that's on there with, I think, an acceptable amount of wobble. Now I need to take these pieces of threaded rod and screw them in here, making sure they're parallel. And for that, I'm just going to use this little block that I use for drilling the holes to get them lined up. And to make sure they're going to stick in there really good, I'm just going to put some wood glue on the end here to essentially glue them into the hole. The wood glue, of course, doesn't stick very well to the metal, but as long as it sticks to the wood, the screw itself is going to hold it in there. The jaws themselves for my chuck are just going to be little pieces of Baltic birch plywood with a notch on either side. Now these jaws are designed to grab a dovetail on the bottom of the workpiece, but to turn this dovetail onto here, first I need to mount the workpiece on a faceplate, and I'll make that next. I'm pressing a shaft through both discs to make sure I'll have them properly aligned when I glue them together. I can't quite make it all the way to the other side with this right size drill, but I have a thinner drill that is extra long, and I can use that to extend the pallet hole to the other side. And now I can use the right size drill to come in from the other side. I'm drilling holes in the faceplate to allow me to mount the stock on it later. With the faceplate on this end and the chuck on the other end, I really can't move either of them to tighten that up, so I need to make a spacer that's about this thick to go in here. One thing I still need to do is to cut a slant into here so they can grab a dovetail on the bottom of whatever I've turned. And I'm just going to use the lathe itself. I put a spacer in here to put these all the way out, and then I'll just turn that slot in there. Hopefully that'll compensate for any wobble in the chuck, but I just now have to make sure that I'll always put these on the same way. I've been having second thoughts about whether making a chuck like this is a good idea, because if any of these things comes loose or the threaded rod comes out, it's just going to come flying in your face, so it's kind of a dangerous thing to make. Having said that, I did use the chuck to make this bowl, and I was actually kind of surprised that it actually worked, and I'll cover that in a separate video.